Beloved soul, welcome back to this sacred space where your spirit is seen, your calling is honored, and your questions are never shamed. This isn't just another video. This is a spiritual release for every chosen one who's ever felt confined by a job title that didn't match their mantle. You didn't land here by luck, you were led here. So before we dive in, I ask you, if this message stirs something deep in your soul, bless this channel with a like, a comment, and a holy subscription. Join this movement of purpose-driven souls walking boldly into what they were born to build. It's a holy discontent. You weren't created to trade hours for dollars until you retire broken, bitter, or buried in dreams you never lived. You weren't knit together in your mother's womb just to clock in and count the days. You weren't filled with divine fire just to water it down in board meetings and dress codes. No, beloved, your identity cannot be contained by a job title. Your purpose cannot be defined by a salary band. Your brilliance was never meant to be boxed into 9 to 5. There's a generation of God's children walking around spiritually unemployed, not because they don't have jobs, but because their gifts are idle, their calling silenced, their potential caged. And the world dares to call it stability. But I call it spiritual stagnation dressed in corporate comfort. You see, the job system was built to reward obedience, not originality. It was designed to maintain order, not multiply vision. You were taught to seek promotions, not purpose. But there's a stirring happening now. Heaven is recruiting kingdom entrepreneurs, people who won't just work for a paycheck, but build for a purpose. This is not rebellion. It's a prophetic awakening. Let me be clear. God is not against jobs. He used Joseph in Pharaoh's palace. He placed Daniel in the courts of Babylon. But for some of you, your job was only a bridge, not a destination. You were meant to pass through, not pitch a tent. And yet, many of you have been stuck at the toll booth of fear, waiting for permission that heaven already signed off on. The frustration you feel isn't a mistake. It's divine tension, the war between who you've settled to be and who you're called to become. Because the longer you deny your calling, the louder your spirit will grieve. The more you suppress the urge to create, the more anxious you'll feel. The more you play small to stay secure, the more your soul will scream in silence. So what's the shift? You must stop asking, will this job make me secure? And start asking, will this path make me obedient to the purpose God has placed within me? Because there is no security outside of God's will. There is no peace in a paycheck that costs you your passion. There is no success in a system that cages your voice. The moment you realize this is the moment your real life begins, that's when your calendar starts aligning with your calling. That's when your energy shifts from burnout to overflow. That's when your mind unlocks ideas you didn't even know you were carrying because you were too busy surviving to receive them. This is a wake-up call to the sleeping entrepreneur in your spirit. You don't need another certification. You need confirmation, and this is it. You don't need to beg for clarity. Clarity comes when you commit. When you stop flirting with your calling and finally marry it. You are awakening. It's time to release the chains of just enough. No, fulfillment doesn't live in longevity. It lives in alignment. They called it safety. They dressed it in benefits, bonuses, and retirement plans. They said, stay here, you'll be secure. But what they really meant was, stay small, stay silent, stay manageable. This is the lie of job security, a gilded cage for the soul of a lion. And if you've ever felt like a lion in a leash, you know exactly what I mean. The world taught you that stability is the goal. A steady paycheck, a predictable schedule, a title that sounds important at dinner parties. But heaven never called you to be predictable. He called you to be powerful, and the two rarely live in the same room. They told you that a job is your source. But Scripture says in Deuteronomy 8:18, remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to produce wealth, not a contract. When did we start worshiping the check instead of the Creator? When did we confuse provision with permission? When did we believe that someone else's approval was the key to our prosperity? It's time to break the agreement, the mental contract that says, if I just stay quiet, if I just don't rock the boat, if I just wait my turn, maybe I'll get a raise, a bonus, a blessing. But child of God, your blessing is not behind a manager's desk. It's behind your obedience. It's in the thing you've been afraid to start, the dream you shelved for practicality, the business idea you dismissed as too much, the message you've carried in silence while building someone else's vision. The job may have been your Egypt, but the promised land doesn't come with a W-2. It comes with walking out by faith. Let me be clear, this isn't about quitting recklessly. It's about listening radically. Because for some of you, God has been whispering, this season is over. But you've kept showing up out of fear. Fear of lack. Fear of judgment. Fear of failing without a safety net. But here's the truth the enemy doesn't want you to know. Your safety net is not the job. It's the favor of God. Your provision is not in the paycheck. When Peter stepped out of the boat, he didn't have a life jacket. He had a word, come. And as long as he walked on that word, the water held him. That's what obedience does. It suspends you above what should drown you. It opens doors no man can shut. It makes rivers in the desert and manna in the wilderness. But you'll never taste that kind of provision if you're married to the illusion of security. Do you know what real security is? It's knowing that even if the job ends, your purpose doesn't. Even if they shut the door, God still holds the keys. Even if you walk alone, heaven walks with you. And when you really believe that, you stop clinging to cubicles that confine your calling. You stop choosing comfort over calling. You stop asking people if it's wise to do what God already confirmed. Because faith won't always look wise to the world. But wisdom in the kingdom is obedience over optics. And here's the secret. The enemy uses job security to keep chosen ones distracted, busy, comfortably numb, too tired to dream, too anxious to build, too dependent to walk away. Because as long as you're under their table, you won't build your own. As long as you're depending on Pharaoh's crumbs, you won't enter the land flowing with milk and honey. But what if I told you the Red Sea was already parting? That the timing you keep waiting on is waiting on you. When God gives you the power to create wealth, He's not talking about hustle culture. He's talking about harvest alignment, about sowing your gifts into fertile soil, about living with integrity, generosity, and vision. He doesn't want you burned out. He wants you built up, rooted, resourced, releasing impact and income at the same time. So if the job feels like a cage, if the check feels like a leash, if the title no longer fits your soul, this is your permission to question it. Not with panic, but with prayer. Because the job is not evil. But if it replaces your God-given direction, it becomes an idol. And we weren't made to worship employment. We were made to walk in assignment. So ask yourself, is this job feeding your future or numbing your gift? Is it a training ground or a trap? Are you there by calling or just comfort? You'll know by the fruit. Because if peace has left the building, then maybe it's time you did too. And don't worry, in the next section, we'll go deeper. We'll talk about how to shift from survival mode into spirit-led strategy. Because leaving the job mentality isn't enough. You need to think like a builder, walk like a steward, and live like the chosen one you are. You've heard the verse. Maybe it was whispered in a sermon or printed on a mug. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the power to produce wealth. Deuteronomy 8:18. But have you ever stopped and truly let it echo in your spirit? He gives you power, not just to survive, but to produce. not just to make a living, but to build a legacy, not just to earn, but to create. This is divine permission, but it's also divine commission. Wealth in the kingdom is never just about possession. It's about purpose.
It's about assignment.
It's about funding what heaven has placed in your hands. Because God's not afraid of money. He's afraid of you forgetting where it came from. Deuteronomy 8 isn't just a blessing, it's a warning. Moses wasn't just shouting into the wilderness, he was speaking into your season. He said, when you step into your next level, when your house is built, when your business grows, when your bank account is full, don't forget. Don't forget the desert. Don't forget the manna. Don't forget the tears you prayed through. Don't forget the voice that carried you when no one else believed. Because the moment you forget the source, you risk turning the blessing into a burden. God gives the power to produce wealth, but He never said you'd find it in the world's systems. He never said you had to hustle like the heathens or grind your soul into dust for validation. No, the power comes from alignment, from listening, from moving when He says move. You want to build wealth God's way? Then understand this. Wealth is not random. It is revelatory.
It's not just income.
It's insight. It's stewardship. It's a reflection of how well you handle what heaven gave. Because God's economy doesn't move by demand, it moves by obedience. Remember this, you're not just an employee in this world. You're a co-creator with the Most High. And when He gives you power to produce wealth, He's entrusting you to multiply what was always meant to bless others. Think about Solomon, the richest man in biblical history. But what was his request? Not riches, not power,
Not revenge.
wisdom. He asked for something that money couldn't buy. And because his heart was aligned, God added the rest. Wisdom unlocked wealth, because wisdom is wealth. God is calling forth modern-day Solomons, entrepreneurs with vision, stewards with sanctified strategy, leaders who don't chase riches but carry responsibility. This is the wealth shift, no longer working just for survival but for kingdom impact, building not for ego but for eternity, funding not for applause but for alignment. You were not born to die with ideas inside you. You were not filled with fire just to beg for crumbs. You were not anointed to stay anxious about rent. You were sent to create systems, to build solutions, to establish legacy, to overflow so others can be filled through your obedience. And make no mistake, this isn't just about money. It's about mindset. Because if your mind still sees wealth as a worldly trap, you'll subconsciously reject the very blessing God's trying to bring. Let's be clear. The love of money is the root of evil. But money itself is just a magnifier. It exposes the heart. When you're righteous, money becomes a weapon for good. It becomes oil to anoint assignments. It becomes bread to feed others. It becomes bricks to build houses of healing. But when you're ruled by fear, you'll waste every provision panicking that it will run out. You'll hold instead of sowing. You'll hoard instead of releasing. And eventually you'll wither under the weight of what you were meant to steward. So hear this, God is not withholding from you. He is waiting on you to renew your perspective, to stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, is this in alignment with my assignment? You're not building a business. You're building a beacon, a lighthouse for others to see what wealth looks like when it's drenched in wisdom.
You're not chasing profits.
You're planting purpose. You're not trying to impress. You're trying to impact. So let this settle in your soul. You were never meant to just make money. You were meant to make moves that outlast you, that serve others, that glorify God. And it begins with this truth. Deuteronomy 8:18 is not just a verse, it's a vow, a commitment from heaven. If you stay aligned, I'll supply. If you remember me, I'll release the overflow. So now, beloved, it's your move. Are you building for performance? Or are you producing from purpose? Because in the next section, we step into the entrepreneurial shift. The mindset you need to carry what God's been trying to give. Let's get one thing straight. You don't need a storefront to be a builder. You don't need investors to begin sowing. You don't need applause to start creating. You need obedience. And it starts on the inside long before the world sees a product. This is the truth they never told you about faith-based entrepreneurship. It begins with the heart, shifts the mind, and only then reaches the hands. Because you cannot birth kingdom wealth with a poverty mindset. You cannot steward overflow with a spirit still addicted to lack. You cannot lead others while still doubting your own calling. Entrepreneurship in the kingdom is not about flashy branding. It's not about marketing funnels or viral launches. It's about becoming the kind of vessel God can pour into and pour through. Let me ask you, have you made peace with being the first? The first in your bloodline to step out. The first to reject survival and walk in calling. The first to tithe off profits instead of paychecks. The first to be mocked for choosing faith over familiarity. It's lonely at first. Obedience always is, but obedience births legacy. Faith-based entrepreneurship isn't just business. It's inner warfare. Every invoice is a battle against self-doubt. Every bold move is a slap in the face of generational fear. Every time you price your worth, you're rewriting the scripts that said, "You're not enough." You're not just launching a product. You're launching a new way of thinking, a new atmosphere for those around you, a new example for those watching you silently, wondering if they too are allowed to believe for more. The marketplace needs prophets. The economy needs kingdom voices. Not just pastors in pulpits, but pioneers in boardrooms, creatives in the field, builders in Babylon who refuse to bow. And the truth is, your business will only rise to the level of your belief. You can have all the strategy in the world, but if you still think wealth is unholy, you'll subconsciously sabotage every breakthrough. So ask yourself, do I really believe God can prosper this idea? Do I believe He can trust me with wealth? Do I believe my business can be a ministry? Because if not, you'll build something that feeds everyone but you. You'll pour out until you're dry. You'll serve clients while starving your own vision. Faith-based entrepreneurship means you invite the Holy Spirit into the blueprint. You pray over contracts. You anoint your Zoom meetings. You ask for discernment before making decisions, not just based on numbers, but on nudges. And let me tell you, this type of business confuses the world. They'll ask, why aren't you scaling faster? Why did you turn down that opportunity? Why didn't you partner with that brand? But you'll know that deal would have cost your peace. That client came with chaos. That yes would have delayed your destiny. Because kingdom entrepreneurs don't just follow trends. They follow truth. They know that every no in the spirit is a yes to something greater down the line. They understand that rest is a strategy and integrity is more valuable than short-term gain. They don't chase, they attract. Because when you're aligned, clients come looking for you. Opportunities find your inbox. Divine connections appear without hustle. That's what happens when you build from within. You stop operating from fear and start moving with clarity. You stop asking, will they buy it? And start asking, did God birth it? You stop copying someone else's model and start listening to God's method. That's when entrepreneurship becomes sacred. When it's not about building fast, but about building faithfully.
It's not about the outcome, it's about obedience.
Because one yes in the Spirit can unlock decades of divine momentum. So hear this loud and clear. You are not behind. You're being prepared. You are not disqualified. You're being refined.
You are not invisible.
You're being preserved. And when God says, now, you'll move with power because you've been forged in the fire of discipline. So today, don't just write a business plan. Write a prayer strategy. Don't just look at your income. Look at your impact. Don't just build what sells, build what shifts atmospheres. You're not just starting a business. You're starting a movement, one that proves prosperity and purity can coexist, one that shows excellence and anointing belong together, one that reminds this world, yes, Christians can create wealth and still walk in worship. And in the final section, we'll close the circle. We'll talk about what happens when you stop hustling and start moving in holy flow. There comes a point when you stop running, not because you've given up, but because you finally understand the truth. God's pace is not rushed. His blessing is not chaotic. And your breakthrough will not require burnout. We've been told too long that hustle equals holiness, that the grind is the only way to grow, that if you're not constantly chasing, you're losing. But in the kingdom, rest is a weapon, stillness is strength, and divine alignment outpaces anxious effort every time. Let's breathe here for a moment. Imagine building a life where you don't have to force anything, where clarity replaces confusion, where you no longer beg for open doors, you simply walk through the ones God opens. This is the flow of faith. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you're led. It doesn't mean you're idle. It means your steps are ordered, because once you've aligned your heart with heaven's rhythm, you realize you're not behind. You're not late. You're just in sync with a plan bigger than yours. See, God doesn't reward the frantic. He crowns the faithful, the ones who wait with peace, who obey when it doesn't make sense, who choose integrity when compromise is easier. That's who heaven promotes. When you release the pressure to make it happen, you open the door for the miraculous. That's how water turned to wine. That's how 5 loaves fed thousands. That's how prisoners sang and chains broke open. Miracles don't come from striving. They flow from trust. So what does that look like practically? It means saying no to opportunities that feel heavy even when they look good. Prioritizing your quiet time with God over marketing schedules. Protecting your Sabbath as fiercely as your sales goals. Walking away from provision that would cost you your peace. And it means asking yourself often, does this make me feel aligned or anxious? Because peace is your compass. And if it robs you of peace, it's not from the Prince of Peace. Friend, you don't need to scream to be seen. You don't need to beg to be blessed. You don't need to sell your soul for success. You only need to stay connected. God will do more with your yielded yes than the world can do with a lifetime of hustle. He's not impressed by your burnout. He's not asking for your exhaustion. He's asking for your heart. Your willingness to move when He speaks, to wait when He says wait, to step boldly when He says go, even if it's not trending, not understood, not easy. That's the real flow. It's where miracles feel normal and pressure has no place. Where your inbox surprises you because someone says, God put you on my heart. Where your products sell out because favor was assigned to your name long before you launched. Where divine partnerships show up without needing you to perform for them. Because this isn't business as usual, this is kingdom movement. You don't just build for profit, you build for purpose. You don't just chase a calling, you become the carrier of one. And when you build this way, you don't burn out. You blaze with peace, with purpose, with presence. So here's how we close this journey. Let go of the false urgency. Let go of the timeline comparison. Let go of the voices telling you you're not enough. And hold on to the whisper of the Spirit that says, you were never supposed to hustle for what I already promised. You are not here to perform. You are here to embody, to reflect light in dark places, to carry abundance without shame, to lead with integrity, to to build with love, to walk in overflow and call it normal. So rise, kingdom builder. The world doesn't need another copy. It needs the real you, the one who flows with heaven's rhythm, not the world's pressure. This is your time, not to strive, but to shine. In and down 100 words. Take a deep breath, beloved. This journey wasn't just words, it was realignment. You weren't called to mimic the world, you were chosen to mirror heaven. And if this message stirred your soul, if something inside of you said, "Finally, I feel seen," drop a comment saying, "I choose flow over pressure." Subscribe, like, and share this with someone building their dream in silence. Because from this day on, you don't grind, you grow. You don't strive, you surrender. You don't chase, you flow. In the kingdom, pace is prophetic, and peace is your permission slip to prosper. Your next level doesn't start tomorrow. It starts right now.